I have my co-host also along with me, my co-founder and partner in crime. He is the Chief Growth Officer of SmartQ. So I would like to call Keshav also on the stage. We are doing this kind of presentation for the first time. Please bear with us if we do any mistakes. Keshav, please come on the stage.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. So,
Cool.
so before we start, how many of you have downloaded the SmartQ app or used the SmartQ app before? Oh, not bad.
Not bad. Thank you.
People do know us. So, for people who don't know about SmartQ, we are we actually build technology for B2B food services for ordering as well as fulfillment channels. We build a lot of tech from the consumer applications, kiosks, mobile apps, point of sale systems, and the kitchen management systems. We've scaled this globally. We are a 200-member tech team headquartered in Bangalore. So we are present in around 19 countries. A small plug about SmartQ before we start the session, because you guys need to be familiar from where we come from and what we've built. So that's about SmartQ, and we'll just jump right into the session, right? So one of the great things that AIM has been doing for the community is they've really leveraged the entire AI revolution and the era of how Gen AI is evolving. But kudos to them. But I couldn't stop not noticing just one interesting part. We are at the largest Gen AI developer summit, but the trends and the Gen AI is evolving so fast that we still call it MLDS. The name is still catching up to the machine learning developer summit. It's still catching up to the Gen AI era. So that's the stage, or that's the era we are in, that we will always be catching up to how the things are evolving in the fields of AI. So yes, just wanted to share that thought, and over to Abhi to begin the session.
We will dive into the topic today, where we will rethink what is the way software is getting developed, and also the software experience of the future. How is it getting shaped with the context of LLM in mind? So if we go to the first thing.
So yeah, Abhi, let's first try and understand what was the purpose of software. Why did we even have software? What was it trying to do, between humans and machines? What was it trying to achieve?
Sure, Keshav. So if you really think about software, right? Software is a way how humans communicate information to the machine and get back information. It was a segue for information exchange between humans and machines. Because machines were not as intelligent as what they are today, we had to pre-bake the software. Developers used to pre-bake screen-by-screen journeys, have drop-downs, buttons, sliders, and all of them, so that humans could communicate to machines in an unambiguous way. For example, let's take that there's a form, and then you have a drop-down to select male or female. I can express that as I'm a guy, I'm a dude, I am a boy, I'm uncle. All of them actually mean male. Because machines were not able to understand what humans mean by the way they talk, we had to hard-code it to a drop-down, right? So let's hinge on to this concept, and we will relook at how it is evolving today, right? So another thing is that because we had to build a lot of UIs and all of this, and there was repetitive work, humans came up with a lot of frameworks. We have got React, Flutter, XYZ frameworks, so that we can speed up our development to deliver these experiences, which is the hard-coded screen-by-screen journeys.
So let's understand now, Abhi, that okay, now we know what software is really meant for. Most people know it, but we understood the core. But how is LLMs playing a role now in this era of LLM-led software development?
Yeah. So the key context is LLM is like Sarvagna, right? It knows a lot of things about a lot of things. And it understands human language. That is the beauty of LLM. Now, with that in context, where it can really interpret what humans mean, it can also generate code. We really have to rethink, should we revisit how the experience of software development and delivery should be, right? So LLM is one of the key driving factors, which is changing this paradigm shift of how humans interact with computer.
So yes, LLMs are the driving factor, but probably to really, for a software developer, engineer, to really know how the future beholds for him, he should understand what's driving the driving factor, right? So what are the key things that we need to look out for in terms of kind of evolution and emergence, which are the driving factors for this LLM
Yeah.
shift?
So I feel LLMs, we will touch upon like what could be the future of software interaction. There are like few factors which are driving LLM evolution. The first one is the purpose-built hardware. You can see people like Grok and then several other companies who are building custom ASIC hardware, which is for LLM kind of load, not the classic computation load. Then we have software optimization. Every other day, people come up with some wacky way how they can build the LLM much cheaper and much faster. And the third one is the data, the quality of data, which is being fed to the LLM is going to dictate the efficacies of LLM. What this results in is that if these three things evolve at a very rapid pace, then you could see an exponential multiplication factor as to how many tokens can it generate per second for a given level of intelligence, and increase in intelligence, of course, and the decrease in cost so that several other opportunities become feasible, which is not feasible today. Right?
Can we play this out like in a timeline? How do we see this evolve probably in the future, like in several years?
So if we look at the key factors which are driving is tokens per second and what is the cost per million, which is going to dictate whether it gets adopted or not in the real world. Now, let's say we are at stage X, which is now. We will soon be at stage 10X. I can't quantify a date because every day when I read the news about AI, my calibration of this time keeps changing. So I'll just tell it as near future. Then we have got this era of, let's say, probably like 50X, where it's like 50 times more speed at which it can generate tokens and 50 times less cost efficient. We will look at these snapshots of time, which is there in the future, as to how software interaction and development evolves, right? And there is probably the last stage, which even I'm not sure about, which is the 100x speed, where each one of us will be in nirvana. So we'll not go into that, but rather look at this.
Great. So maybe let's dive into stage X where we are today.
Sure. Stage X, if you think about a frontier model like Claude Sonnet V2, which can be really used in a real enterprise software development world, or if you take O3 Mini, which has recently come in, if you look at that level of intelligence, we are somewhere at like 100 tokens per second of useful output. And then the cost is roughly around like $7 per million token. These are indicative. As I speak, this keeps changing. But let's take this. This is the snapshot of time at which we want to analyze. And let's look at like how the software development is changing, right? So with this context in mind, where it can generate like 100 tokens per second, it is decent enough to write a lot of lines of code per day. So it's really changing the speed at which we are writing software, and we are able to give tools to it, and it is able to interact with the system, and then enable us to do something called as agentic steerable software development, which we have a demonstration about, which I'll just show you guys. Keshav, any thoughts?
So I think, yeah, best is let's show what we are talking about. We couldn't actually do a live demo because we have constraints. We recorded this was just recorded yesterday, which was as live as we could get.
Yeah, we were not able to do live demonstration. It would have been a lot more fun. It was live. Because of the paucity of time, we will just show the pre-recorded one, which is right now. We are going to demonstrate a sample agentic-based software development flow. We've got our in-house agentic software development framework called as Deva. So this is the Deva software. It has a bunch of agents, each agent specializing in a specific programming language. So we'll take the example of Flutter developer agent. Let me start off the agent, and then I'm going to start prompting it. Right now, this agent is connected to the local file system, and it is currently monitoring and operating on this project source code. And the output of that is what you can see it on the right. So I'm going to prompt it to build a small functionality. On the email input screen, can you add a text button below the get OTP called help, which when user clicks on it, pops up a dialog box which has got user query as a text input and a send button. It has transcribed it now. At this point of time, the agent is given a little bit of guidelines as to how this project needs to be implemented. It's a Flutter project and it has been told basic rules like what is the coding principle. Then it starts looking into relevant files. So using semantic similarity search, it has shortlisted 30 most relevant files. And now agent will select few of these files to be read. So it has now read email input screen and some of the design tokens. It has done the modification and it has written back the file. So let's look at like what is the modification it has done. So it has added this whole new piece of code, and then it has made few small errors which might be because of some import errors. You can just add those things and now the code is clean. Let's hit save. Now you can see that there is a help form dialog which has come up, right? Yeah. So what you just now saw is an agentic way of software development. There are a bunch of tools out there which are there in the market like Cursor, Devin, and all of them. Each one have their own pros and cons. This is something which is meant for enterprise software development. This is an in-house tool which 200 developers inside SmartQ have started using on a real-world project which has got like 500, 600 files composed of projects. The key thing what we need to observe here is most of the time developer has to spend articulating the intent of what tasks need to be done. He need not even write line by line or even open those files. The agent will perform an action and then it is getting reviewed at regular time by the developer as to what changes have been done, and he is approving and then going to the next task. It has got great observability in place. For example, there are likes of Devins where you give a high-level prompt and you wait for like several minutes to find out that it has done something very different than what you expected, right? So LLM has this fuzziness where at every stage there is a probability of success. So if you give a big enough task and when you cascade it with probability of success, the final result of your success will be like only 10%. But rather you would want to give bite-sized task, observe the output, and then keep steering the AI, right? So the key takeaway is that we are going to be in an era where you will have a bunch of agents which are like sitting on your machine and you're just distributing work to them and they are working on it, you're reviewing it, approving it. So that is going to be the de facto flow of how people are going to build software, and it is multilingual. You can tell it in Kannada, Hindi, whatever language you are comfortable with, and then keep steering the output of the LLM.
Just wanted to give an insight around this. What we're seeing is actually very exceptional. Even though I'm from SmartQ, I'm saying this, is that this was initially a command line version when Abhi conceptualized it. And the command line version evolved by building itself and evolving itself. He just worked with the tool and evolved it to this level where now 200 developers are using it, right? And a company like Cursor raised probably what, 50, 100 million, 400 million valuation to kind of scale it. We are in India, and with our ingenuity and with our kind of hustle and jugaad thinking, we've been able to build something which is as competitive, and it was all built by, it probably has 30, 40,000 lines of code across this tool, and it was all built over like 2 weeks by one single developer, which is Abhi. So just wanted to give a shout out to that.
Thank you. Thanks, Keshav. The key takeaway is that once you know how to leverage LLM, the sky is limit for the imagination, and that's how version 1 of Deva was used to build version 2 of Deva, then you swap version 2, build version 3, right? Then the evolution of that particular software can go very exponential, and suddenly we added like voice input and all of that thing. Cool. So we'll not dwell too much into Deva. Let's go into the next piece, which is, okay, this is fine at stage X, software development, how does it look? Let's look at stage X, how the software interaction, before we just go there, this is a classic Three Idiot ka movie annotation, where the ingenuity and creativity is what comes with Rancho, and that is what each one of us should be. And we will have a bunch of chaturs, which are like agents, which are there, which will do the job which has been described, right? So the real fun and important thing is how can you be rancho and steer a lot of cheturs for the outcome which you want, right? So that's a piece of advice. So let's, thank you. So let's go to another video as to how the software experience is evolving in the agentic era where when the machines are able to understand what do we mean. So this is a live example, real example. So I'm going to play this video out.
Is some
Show me
context on this?
high protein options. Can you further filter for non-veg high protein options? एक बटर चिकन कार्ट में डाल दो. एक वाइट कलर स्वीट डिश आपके मेन्यू में था. कैन यू शो दैट आइटम? I've got 4 kids with me and each of them will probably eat half of rasmalai. Can you add appropriate quantity to the cart? Okay, order place Smart Budu.
That's right. He's on a diet.
Yeah. So what you guys saw here is a real live interaction with an LLM. If you really see how the paradigm has shifted, if we connect back to the first slide which I was talking about where you've got drop downs, buttons, sliders and all of that thing, that is just translated to like voice input, where a human is able to communicate so much of information ahead of time in such short period of time. So if you look at humans as well, right, we have got mechanical way, I mean the muscles to give the input, and we have got voice. Voice is the fastest way how you can deliver information to the system, but voice is not the most optimal way to get back the information from machine. Visual is the fastest way to get back, right? So we are seeing a paradigm where voice is an input and visual is an output, right? So that is the fastest way how it is evolving. Even in the food ordering application, what we are actually looking and asking for the customer is what do they want the food, when do they want, how much quantity do they want, right? So these three information, if you can communicate in the fastest way, you could script a lot of screens. Now in this, what essentially that agent is doing is software developer has frozen the screens and the content which needs to be there in the screen. Agent is controlling the software, deciding which screen to be shown with what populated information, right? That's how agent is becoming a middleman to translate humans' intent and operating on the software on behalf of the human.
Yeah, and another interesting observation is like, even if previously people used to say, if I know what I want, I can easily speak to the software and it'll order for me. But what if I want to explore? I need a UI, I need to go through different options, I need some visuals around it. But even that, now, if you can just speak to the AI saying, I feel like having something, you know, something in chocolate today. I feel like I'm on a cheat day. I just want to have indulge in food, right? It'll still be able to understand that and give you more relevant options than you browsing and scrolling what exactly you want to do. So either ways, your entire experience could be you can filtered and fine-tuned through an agent-based experience.
Yeah. So typically the skill set which is required for a software developer, right, is really to understand, like for example, he still needs to understand the software architecture. They have to make software choices as to what are the frameworks and what are the screens. But the interesting thing which they need to have it in their mind is how agent is driving the software, not the human themselves. And that's how they have to start engraving that human kind of behavior inside the software so that it delivers the best experience.
I think, yes. So I think stage X is kind of what we are at today. But if you want to extrapolate this into how we move to 10X, what are some of the paradigms and ideas we can see when we are like we have access to so much more tokens, so much lesser cost when every organization is using it. How would the design paradigms and architecture of front-end experience change at that time?
Sure, Keshav. We'll touch upon that. So let's look at 10x stage, where we are able to get like 1,000 tokens per second, and the cost is very minuscule. At this point of time, if you really think about it, what is the front-end experience, right? It has a bunch of layout and a bunch of widgets, right? Usually developer freezes it upfront and sends. Now in the stage X era, LLM is deciding that I will give this layout, probably choose this content in it, right? Now when it goes to the next level where it can generate lot more information on the fly, what developers will have to do is make some smart choices on architecture, freeze on the framework, but not even freeze on the screens, right? You let the agent on the fly write Flutter code or React code along with certain boundaries and constraints, but essentially you're not pre-baking the screens also, right? So that's the time when it's more like you're teaching LLM or agent as to when it is delivered to the end consumer, what information you want to be passed to the server, and rest everything it is doing on the fly, right?
So how you spoke to the Deva and code came out,
Yes.
the user will start saying what he wants, and the agent will start building screens and code based on that experience that the user wants.
Absolutely.
So
So what
basically,
we saw in Deva was at like 100 tokens per second. It didn't have that speed at which it could generate on the fly. So this is like an experience, right? Like for example, a person who is planning to view the menu, these widgets are not pre-baked, right? It is personalized to that person who is using it. If I'm a gamer, then it might stitch a UI for me, which is like Lego blocks style. Or if I'm, let's say, an old person, then it is giving me visuals which is more broad and bold, right? You can hyper-personalize the creation of this. You just have to feed the brand guidelines and let the AI figure out what is the best UI which needs to be rendered for the person in the context.
yeah, if I'm like a Gen Z and if I like very minimal interface, it'll stitch. If it knows that my demo, like my kind of a personality, it'll stitch that user experience for me.
That's correct.
But if I'm someone who likes to kind of select and choose everything and very health conscious, I want a lot more information in each screen, then it'll stitch that nutritionally rich screen for me to kind of decide on whether I want it or not.
Absolutely, Keshav. It might even decide on the speed at which you're talking as well, right? Like if you're in a hurry for a meeting room,
Right.
then you're telling, I want to order something quickly, right?
Right.
The moment it sees that it is no more throwing nutrition information or anything, it is just coming to the point that, hey, Keshav, you have been having sandwich. These are the options which are available for you.
Right.
Or if you go something like, acha, kuch dikhao, then you know that you have got time and it will give an indulgent view of the menu, right? So that's how LLMs on the fly will stitch the UI front-end experience.
Interesting. Yes. Now moving on to 50x. Now what can we expect at if this is going to be if it's like real-time stitch software at 10x, where will we go at 50x? Abhi, I'm can't probably imagine what things will be like. So help me.
Cool. So let's dive into this era. Take it with a pinch of salt. This is something which is like a prediction which is there. It might come true, it might not come true. But literally when we are having 50,000 tokens per second which could be generated, it's a lot of information which an LLM can generate. If you have seen stable diffusion and all of those kind of models, you give it a prompt and it creates the image at a literally pixel level, right? You can have any sort of imagination as to what needs to come out in that pixel and it will stitch the imagination for you. So if you go to that level, maybe from the software development point of view, you're not even doing a framework choice. Why are frameworks required? Frameworks are required to speed up the development so that user can specify their user experience in less amount of code. Like for example, Flutter is going to augment me not to worry about how the button gets rendered with its curvature, with its gradients, with its ripple effect. All of that is offloaded from the developer to the framework, right? Now when we are at an era where it is literally drawing at a pixel level, it doesn't even need a framework, right? It can go straight to the hardware level where it is imagining what is the best UI without any boundaries of framework and it is stitching on the fly. So at that point of time, we don't need framework, nor we need coding. It will be more like we train the agent on brand guidelines. We illustrate the scenario of what it means to be human. Like for example, if you want to ask the food ordering application, today is Friday, show me something interesting, then it might infer that it is intelligent mode, that you are entering the weekend and things of that sort. So we're talking about scenarios, condition, and the experience which needs to be created, and we are not limited by the framework or boundaries at all.
So saying we'll move closer to the user as we evolve with better and better capabilities of LLMs.
Yeah.
You'll stop thinking of the boundaries of the current
Framework.
way architectures we build. We'll just open it up to the users, kind of the best experience that we can.
LLM's wild imagination as to what the experience it wants to deliver to the user. So what is that going to be? As I was telling, pixel by pixel, imagine a fast artist which is just writing a drawing on the screen, on the fly, depending on the context. It's hyper-personalized. It might be a collapse of App Store as well, because your LLM, which is generating and running at such speed, could be the one single entity which is going to deliver every possible app, right? Because it is imagining and then rendering it. So every brand, like a food ordering application or a cab service, will articulate to the front-end LLM telling that these are my services, these are the way which I need to receive the data. You figure out what is the best way you want to render it, right? So universal LLM OS kind of thing is what will emerge. I don't have a visualization for it, but there is green shoots of this way of delivering software and game, which is coming into existence. Google has this project called as Gen N Game Engine, where typically in a game engine, you have sprites, you create a map, and then you create first player movement as to when somebody rotates left, then you have to rotate the screen by XYZ coordinates. Game engines like Unity simplify the development. They are like frameworks. Now, they have challenged this, and then they have come up with this. So this is a classic Doom engine. So the key takeaway there was that it is generating all those at pixel level. There was not a single line of code which was written. It was prompted that I want a game which is similar to Doom. And the moment first player shooter moves, it is painting those picture pixel by pixel. There is absolutely no code in between, right? So people are able to recreate this at a lower fidelity, maybe at few pixels per second at a very low frequency per second, but eventually it will evolve to a level where it is able to render this.
But how does this change the rest of it? Like the front-end experience is good, but what about everything else behind it? And also, how will it evolve the role of a software engineer? That will be more interesting to know.
Yeah. So again, if we really look at it, there is a front-end LLM which is delivering the experience, everything on the fly. Then you have the back-end LLM. If you really look at it, when we talk about APIs and endpoints, right, even they are like frozen, right? You have got a specific format in which you need to hit that API and you get back that information, right? But the core is the information. So if you replace that API gateway with an LLM which is sitting in between, and you have got a hardcore logic, which is your database and then the rest of the authentication layer, then the backend LLM can transfer the information to any front-end LLM in the format which the front-end LLM is expecting for. So you don't need a hard-coded format of JSON format exchange for an API endpoint. It's going to be very fluid, like as if both of them are communicating and telling that, Macha, you send me what is menu for snacks, and then it is sending the snacks, right? So that's the way we can do it.
That could collapse the API paradigm as well to probably a socket level communication paradigm.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Again, so I'm going to end this topic. It's like the next era is going to be there for dreamers, creative people who can imaginate wild and then deliver something which was impossible yesterday. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any questions we can take, or?
Sorry? Yeah.
Yeah, just one thing, guys, I think we forgot to mention. So We are having a masterclass in SmartQ on 13th of Feb. You might have got it in each of your welcome kits as well, where we are exposing and giving Deva access to a bunch of developers who would like to try their hands on it. So if interested, please come by to our office. It's in
You
the
can
evening of
experience
13th.
it. We have not made it open source because of our parent company restriction.
Yeah.
So
Fine.
yeah.
So that's another mention.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry?
Yes,
Yes,
offline, and you'll get subscription for Deva for 1 month as well.
One thing.
We can have few more questions, friends, if you have any questions.
Yeah, hello.
There's
Hi.
a question there.
It was a very good session. One thing I wanted to ask, like, we have different problems, solutions coming through LLM, but there are a lot of other problems also which is coming, like, in the back end, how do you see when this scales up to a lot of users?
Yeah.
You have token limits and all that stuff happening. So did you face any of these problems, and what did you do to resolve them?
Yeah, so again, we had the enterprise Google Cloud subscription. For Deva tool, we use Claude Sonnet V2, which was hosted in Google Cloud. When you get the enterprise subscription, you have got a very high limits of RPMs and then tokens per second. And that's how we were able to mitigate it. Again, it's a clever way of how you want to use the tokens. So we have got conversation here, history clearance, and we educate people that if you end up having a very long conversation with Deva, then the token count is going to go exponentially. So we tell them to break that into smaller tasks and then switch the context. Right?
Got
So
it. Thanks a lot.
Someone there has a question. Can you pass the mic on, please? We are not able to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, not audible.
Thank you. First of all, fantastic presentation, guys.
Thank you.
I have a question related to if I have MS Power Apps, that is a low-code, no-code environment, right?
Yes.
And if I want to build websites or UI
Yeah.
by that, is it capable of doing that or?
Deva is not capable. Generally, usually low-code platforms have their own framework in which they run. But I have a view on low-code that low-code was giving you the speed, but it was not giving you the control and observability. With LLMs, you get the same control and observability as a classic code, but you get the speed of low-code. Right? So people are questioning, do I even have to be bounded by low-code framework, or can I go full code, but at the same speed of low-code?
Okay.
Yeah. So Deva is not compatible with Power Apps because Power Apps have their proprietary way how they encode the information and program.
Does know till when we can take the
Sorry, we are
question.
out of time.
We can
Folks,
take the
don't get
questions.
disappointed. Abhishek and Keshav will be right outside the Audi 2 hall as well. So you can ask me as many questions as possible. Please feel free to do that. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
And thank you, Abhishek and Keshav. That was a wonderful and cool stuff, yeah?